Hello, everybody. Once again, welcome to another episode of Cinemacast, right here on YouTube and also on our Twitch and our Rumble channels as well. If you guys have yet to follow us on either of those, links are down below in the description section, and I hope I see you guys there as well. So, let's take a look at a very good film today. Even though the critical reception, it was fair at 70% for Rotten Tomatoes, but it's still a pretty decent movie from actor, director, and producer Clint Eastwood. Now, Clint Eastwood, a lot of people may know him for his roles in a lot of the old spaghetti westerns, a lot of the classic action movies, the Dirty Harry franchise, action dramas like In the Line of Fire and such. He was in a lot of great movies. He was even in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which has a slew of Hollywood favorites in that movie, which is another recommendation. And hopefully here soon I will get a review out there if you have yet to see it. I have yet to see it, actually, but I plan on watching it and giving my thoughts in a review of the movie as well when I check it out. Now, Clint Eastwood, he has directed a lot of good films, and some that he hasn't even starred in. One of them that I remember watching was titled Flags of Our Fathers, which was based on a true story from World War II, a story from World War II. This was about, I forgot where the spot was. It was about the soldiers that were planting the flag up on the hill where they were at, the hill that they overtook. I forgot where that was at, but that was a good film. It really was. And let me tell you, when it comes to war stories and such, you know, Clint Eastwood, he does tell those stories very well. And he does a lot of dramatic acting as well. You know, one example was the movie Gran Torino that came out, was it a decade ago, I think? I want to say it was, you know, I'm trying not to look back on his history of films, but I want to say, let's see, Gran Torino, yeah, it came out in 2008. So over 15 years ago. And that was a damn good film right there. You know, that really was. And he played, I think in a lot of these older roles that he takes for himself, he has that role where he's a veteran of some foreign war, you know, U.S. veteran, you know, Gran Torino, which is a, you know, completely different story. You know, he's a mean old son bitch in that film. Whereas he's kind of polarized in this movie for this role, where he's not mean, you know, he's just somebody who's up there in age, you know, he's enjoying life, and he's made some little mistakes that he regrets, and he tries to make amends. And this is not just a story told by Clint Eastwood. This is a story that was based on the 2014 New York Times article. I'm probably butchering this word, Sinaloa, the Sinaloa cartel. So it's about this gentleman who is a war veteran, a World War II veteran, who in his 80s, he ran as I guess he was a drug mule, you know, he was in his 80s or 90s, however which way you put it. But yeah, he was a drug mule for the Sinaloa cartel. And this is based on a true story. It's based on the life of Leo Sharp, who I'm going to go into for a little bit. So Leo Earl Sharp, who is known as El Tata, he was an American World War II veteran, horticulturist. Yeah, I'm butchering that word. But basically, he was into planting. You know, he enjoyed plants, fruit plants, vegetable plants, this kind of. You know, he was a planter. You know, he was a gardener, basically. You know, that was a hobby of his. He enjoyed it. It was also a job of his. And in his later years, he became a drug carrier for the branch of the Sinaloa cartel. And, he has, like I said, he has a military service. He fought in the Italian campaign of World War II. And then he had his career. And then he ran drugs for the cartel. I guess it's not to be confused with the cartels in Mexico. I don't think it was done south of the border. It was within the country. But Sharp used a Lincoln Mark LT pickup truck to transport between 100 and 300 kilograms of cocaine at a time from the southern U.S. border to the Detroit, Michigan area. The cartel also used him to transport drug proceeds in excess of $2 million per return trip from Michigan to Arizona in the same pickup truck. So this film follows Earl Stone, played by Clint Eastwood. And you gotta love these movies, though. You gotta love the movies that are directed by, produced by, and starring Clint Eastwood. You're in for a good show. This is a good movie. It's based on a real life event, a real life person. And I think he tells it very well. Now, is it historically accurate? Usually movies that are based on stories are never 100% accurate. There's always something that is thrown in there for the dramatics or for a little bit of action sequence or whatnot. But I think this movie, it was played out very well. There is a little bit of comedic humor to it. Clint Eastwood, he has that subtle old person sense of humor that he adds in there. And let me tell you, me being 39 years old, and I know I am in the millennial generation, but I get the sense of humor, from my grandparents. They had a certain sense of humor that I got from them, certain wordings and certain phrases and such. And I really feel for them, and I miss my grandparents. Who doesn't? But I feel like somebody like Clint Eastwood, who at his age, he plays these roles and he makes these roles more likely for an older audience, but there's a broad young audience that they do view this film or films like this and they enjoy them, even if there's certain context in the movie that a younger generation probably doesn't understand or probably thinks, man, this boomer, what the hell's he doing? He was very senile at his age. It's like, well, that's the concept of the story. And that's what I'm going to get into. So I'm pretty sure if you have not seen The Mule, or you don't know much about Leo Sharp, the story of Leo Sharp, cut the stream off right now and go read up on him, go watch The Mule and come back. Because like I always say, there could be spoilers, that I'm going to throw out there. But I'm not going to go really deep into the synopsis of the film. So basically, now Leo Sharp, he's a World War II veteran, whereas in this story, Earl Stone, who is based off his character, he is a Korean War veteran, but he also is a celebrated horticulturalist. And I keep butchering that word. I mean, I don't even know how to fully pronounce it, but somebody out there will probably look it up and be like, okay, I understand what you're saying. So the subtle story behind this character is he spends most of his life in his work. He takes pride in his work. He's always on the road. He's always transporting plants and products and such. And he is a celebrated, workman, with his celebrated workmanship of what he does. He receives awards. He takes so much pride in it. But you start to see where his family rejects him because he was never around for his family. He was never around for his wife a lot of times. He misses out on his daughter's wedding, and his granddaughter who gives him a chance, who knows that he can change, So you see a saddened story of a man who's trying to make things happen for his family, and they turn away, they shun him away because he was never there for them. and they feel like his work is way more important than family. So there is a subtle plot to this movie as it goes along, which is added to the story. You know, like even though it's mostly about him running drugs for the cartel, but there is that subtle plot where it falls in where, you know, he's missing from his family, and he has spent so many years away from them, and he's trying to reconcile but can't. And then he's down on his luck where his business is going under. He can't afford to pay for his home. His home is being foreclosed on, and he's pretty much homeless, but he doesn't really try to bother his family. You know, there's a scene where he is visiting his granddaughter, and this is several years later. So this takes place within a time period of 10 years. So a lot of this begins, I think it was like 2008 or something like that, or 2005, and then like 10 years later, he's visiting his granddaughter who's getting married, and this is around when he's in a slump. His business is going under, and all he cares about, you know, he goes to visit his granddaughter, you know, on the day of not her wedding, but he knows she's getting married, and he wants to pay a visit. So the family, you know, his wife who had divorced him, his daughter who resents him, they think that he's just visiting for money. You know, he has nowhere to go, but he tells them, "Don't worry about it, I'll be all right." So there is this gentleman. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a little bit for you guys. So the plot of the story, it takes place 12 years. It's a 12-year span, not 10 years. I was close to it. Reading up on it now. I'm trying to go off of memory from watching it a couple nights ago. So the plot for that sub-story is a 12-year span. I was close. It's not 10-year span, it's 12-year span. So yeah, I was right. You know, he does visit his granddaughter to attend her wedding rehearsal, not telling his family that the reason that he's there is because his flower farming business had gone bankrupt and his home had been foreclosed on by the bank. So while he's there and he's shunned away from his family as he's leaving, he's spotted by a member of the drug cartel who was there as a friend of the family, who had been tipped off by one of Earl's former employees about his financial problems. So this guy, he goes up to Earl and he tells him that he can offer him some work to help him with his money problems. And Earl accepts it, and he becomes a mule. But he don't know what he's transporting. All he knows is he has to drive to a certain location, meet up with a certain group of people. They load up his truck. He delivers it under instruction, and he makes the pay, or he receives the pay. So the first couple runs that he makes, he makes a total of, I think it was 10 or 12 runs. I forgot what it was throughout the movie. And each run that he makes, all he knows is he's dropping something off and he's getting paid for it, and that's that. So the first run that he makes, and they tell him to park it at a motel, stay the night at the motel, leave the keys in the glove box, and he comes back. So what happens is he parks the truck, leaves it there, sends a text message to whoever is on the receiving end. They come and grab the truck, take it to where they need to take it, unload, bring the truck back with the payment, and then that's that. And it's usually several thousands of dollars that he receives. So he begins to take advantage of it a little bit, where he manages to buy himself a new truck, pay for his granddaughter's wedding. He ends up paying off his house, so it's no longer in foreclosure. And then he starts, you know, mending around the town. You know, there's a VFW nearby in his hometown that's going under. So he does a run, brings some money in, pays to keep the VFW up and going and such, you know. So he's doing little minor, you know, odds and ends for, you know, his family, himself, you know, to keep up with it whenever he needs money. But then, a little bit further in the story, it comes to, I think it was the main operator of that cartel group who's in charge of everything. He hears about the mule that is running the doing the runs for him, and he wants to meet him and he wants to hire him on as a runner for certain bigger transportations. And he accepts. He's accepting the money. He this is pretty much where he gets a little too deep into what he's doing. So at this point, there's really no backing out, because by I think like the fourth or fifth run, he realizes he's running cocaine. He's running drugs. He's not okay with it, but he makes the runs instead. He feels uncomfortable with it, but it's something that he's doing. He's making money. He's helping his granddaughter through college. He paid for her tuition. And at this point, even in the story, he becomes more closer and closer to his ex-wife, who they begin to reconcile throughout the movie, slowly but surely. And he begins to earn back his family's trust and respect as he is showing up more and more to be there for his family. And of course, throughout the movie, you have some special agents who are played by Bradley Cooper, Michael Pafia, Pena. I'm sorry, I can't even read this morning. Michael Pena or Pena, however you pronounce his last name. And of course, like I said, Bradley Cooper, and they are under the authorization of Lawrence Fishburne's character of the Chicago DEA. And they know of the cartel smuggling drugs throughout the country. And they are on top of it, and they're trying to figure out who's running it and see if they can stop him. And this whole time that Earl Stone is running these drugs, they can't catch him. They don't know who it is. This guy is that slick, but the cartel catches on, and they're like, "Nah, we don't know about this guy. We want him to run strictly by instructions." But the main head of the cartel is like, "No, he runs on a particular way. Let him do what he's doing. He gets the job done. That's all that matters." But then things do take a turn for the worse, where he does get in deep, and it could mean life or death for him. So there is a scene that does come to a close, sort of, toward the end, where he's making one big run, but he ends up taking a detour when he finds out that his ex-wife is dying, and he hears this from his granddaughter. So at first he tells him that he can't make any stops, he can't turn around, he can't do that, because he knows he could die. But he ends up making a choice. You know what? I don't care. I'm going to go back and be with my family. So he veers off of the run, and he takes, I think it was like a week or so hiatus from them, where the cartel's looking for him and they're trying to kill him because he did not make the shipment. But all the while, he goes back and he stays by his ex-wife's side, which they reconcile their love for each other, their respect for each other, and he earns his daughter's respect as well, and her love. So he rekindles relationships with his family during this time period, as he came back to spend time with them up until the point where his ex-wife does pass away. And by then, he continues to make the run, where he is stopped by two people of the cartel who threatened to kill him, and he told them, and he tells them on the spot, he said, "Look, this is why I stopped. But, I know I'm late, so do what you got to do. If you got to shoot me, go ahead. I'm better off. Might as well be dead." But they continue to, they get in contact with, the new higher up, and he continues to make the run until the DEA catches on who it is and where he's gonna be at. And he does get stopped by the DEA, and he is arrested, and he is tried in the court of law, which I think also happens in real life too, Leo Sharp. Let me see. It might be a little bit similar to that, but in the movie, he is tried in court, and his attorney tries to persuade the judge that he was, he's a senior citizen, up there in age. These people were taking advantage of him because of his age and his I can't senility. I don't even know. thinking he's old and senile, basically. You're taking advantage of him because of his age, that kind of thing. But this man knows he was guilty of what he did, and he's already reconciled with his family. He's made amends with his family, and he pleads guilty, and he's proudly going to serve his time in prison, which he does. And while he's in prison, he takes up his hobby again, planting certain type of plants that he was selling and growing, when he was running his business. So he's living happily in the prison yard. Now, Leo Sharp, actually, in the story of his life, he was allowed to speak at his sentencing hearing before Judge Edmonds. He addressed the judge, "I am really heartbroken I did what I did, but it's done in an effort to avoid prison." Sharp made a plea. Instead of custodial services or a custodial sentence, he proposed paying $500,000 penalty that he owed the government by growing Hawaiian papayas. "It's sweet and delicious," he told the court. The court declined the offers and sentenced him to 3 years in prison. His defense stated that Sharp had dementia and would do poorly in prison. He was released in 2015 due to his declining health after only serving a year of his sentence, when, of course, he passed away of natural causes December 12th in 2016. So, yeah, he still serves. So there was a little difference between the movie and the actual real-life story of this man. But even though it's a bittersweet end for both, but I do think that this story was brilliantly told by Clint Eastwood. He told the story. It has a lot of heart, and it can tug on a few heartstrings that you feel, not just for the character, but for his family as well. So you feel for this old man. There's a little bit of comedic humor with it. And you feel like this character is in mortal danger in some ways because he is running drugs for a dangerous group of people. But at this point, he's like, you know what? I don't even care. I'll do it. I'll do it. I've already lived my life the way I did. At some point, he hasn't, rekindled his relationship with his family up until the end, where he does. And he's happy about it, and that's where he is in life. So the story, like I said, it is brilliantly told, and it's beautifully produced. The screenplay was written by, who is that? Nick Shenk. Nick Shenk. I can't get with these weird names. I'm sorry, I really am. But going to the critical reception of this movie. So, like I said, Rotten Tomatoes gave this movie an approval rating of 70% based on 190 reviews, with the average rating of 6.2 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, "A flawed yet enjoyable late-period Eastwood entry. The Mule stubbornly retains its footing. I can't read. Must be tired. Retains its footing despite a few missteps on its occasionally unpredictable path." On Metacritic, the film is weighed with an average score of 58 out of 100, based it off of 37 critics, indicating mixed to average reviews. Peter DeBruge of Variety wrote, "It's a great true story, colorfully told by Sam Dolnick of the New York Times." David Ehrlich of IndieWire gave the film a B+ and called it Eastwood's best in over 25 years, writing, "This soulful and deeply satisfying film, a fitting swan song, if ever there was one, makes a compelling argument that change is always possible, and that the path we're on is never as narrow as the highway makes it look." And that's a pretty good statement coming from, a critic. But I will say that, yes, even though there may be some flaws with this film at times, that may turn off certain viewers. I will say that this movie, it's not for all audiences, I would say. Maybe I don't think younger audiences would appreciate the acting or the story with this movie. You know, and certain audiences, when they hear Clint Eastwood, they're either going to say, okay, it's either an action movie or a drama movie. And then you got some Eastwood fans that prefer action over drama, or maybe some that prefers drama over action. And to me, I only see maybe a couple handfuls of Eastwood's work, and he puts his all into these movies. He really does. And even at his age, you know, he's 95, or he will be 95 this year, and he puts his all into his movie. You know, he's up there in age. He's he hasn't acted in like 2 or 3 years, and I don't think he's directed either. But you know, he's done a lot of great work, and I think if he's not doing anything for television or movie wise, I think he can retire happily, knowing that he has some really good films out there that will be cherished and enjoyed by certain audiences. And to me, this is one of those that I could actually watch over and over again, just like Gran Torino. When he tells a story like Gran Torino, that is a movie that I can actually watch over and over again. Not because there's certain scenes in there that are good, not because there are certain characters or actors that I enjoy watching. It's a great story, and it's beautifully told, and it's beautifully directed. You know, Clint Eastwood, you know, he has a vision, he takes to it, and he just puts his all in there. He doesn't try too hard, he doesn't try too less. His acting is just right. And for a movie like this, you know, him telling the story of a World War II veteran in his 80s or 90s who's running drugs for the cartel over a matter of months, and just to bring it to the big screen, you know, bring it to film, and he does it very well. So what do I think about this movie? I think this is a really good entry in his repertoire. Clint Eastwood did a very good job with this movie. I really did enjoy it, and I give The Mule a 9 out of 10. So, did you guys check out this movie? What do you think about this movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What was your favorite parts about this movie? What did you like about the story? Let me know down in the comments section, guys. And that does it for today's episode of Cinemacast. I'd like to thank you guys for joining in today. Thank you for listening to me rant, and as I couldn't read certain words, of course. So if you do like our content, if you like our podcast here, if you like our game streams and such, please leave a like and follow or subscribe down below, depending on what platform you watch us on. Today's feature was The Mule, starring Clint Eastwood and Lawrence Fishburne. Guys, thank you for joining me. And until next time, we'll see you right back here at the cinema.